September 6th, 2014 was a landmark day in speedrunning history. Just past midnight, speedrunner Zallard1 played the first ever perfect Mike Tyson fight. Tyson, of course, is at the very end of Punch-Out. He's one of the hardest and most iconic final bosses ever. Fittingly, his world record is considered the most prestigious in all of Punch-Out. So, what was this perfect Tyson fight? Well, to beat Tyson in the first round, you have to land frame-perfect punches that deal extra damage. You have just 1/60th of a second to time them. And you have to do that over and over and over. The more you hit, the faster your time, up to a maximum of 22 frame-perfect punches. For many years, the world's best players maxed out at about 20. Matt Turk, Sinister1, as good as these guys were, they always faltered somewhere. But on this day, Zallard finally did it. He went 22 for 22 and didn't miss a single punch. This was a perfect Tyson fight. It was the first time it had ever been performed in the game's 27-year history, and the result was a time of 2 minutes and 10 seconds. The general consensus was that this record was unbeatable. Matt Turk himself thought it would likely never be improved. After all, how could you improve over perfection? Well, that, my friends, is a very good question.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Yes! Yes! Yes! Yes! Yes! Yes! Yes!
Yes! Right, dude! Woo! We did it!
Yes! Yes, I did it! I did it! I did it! I did it! I did it!
Hey again, Summoning Salt here. 6 months ago, I released the first entry in the Summoning Salt VHS collection. Thanks to all of you, it was a massive success. Well now, I'm excited to announce the collection is expanding. Releasing today is the next entry in the Summoning Salt VHS series, Mega Man 2. For those who are new, I love physical media, especially the nostalgia of VHS. So I'm re-releasing my videos as a line of VHS tapes. They feature professionally designed artwork, as well as a fully playable VHS tape. This one features my video, The History of Mega Man 2 World Records. And fittingly, the first 5,000 will be on a limited edition blue VHS tape. What's better for a VHS release than an 80s game like Mega Man 2? Display it on a shelf as a collectible, or watch it on a CRT during a retro movie night. The choice is yours. Also, just like the last tape, I updated my Mega Man video with everything that's gone on with the record since the original upload in September 2022. I'm super excited to build the Summoning Salt VHS collection, and I hope you are too. To order, click on the link in the description and pinned comment below, or go to summoningsalt.com and press View Full Details for the full description and pictures. Act fast! It's available for the next 3 weeks only, and just the first 5,000 are in blue. More videos are coming in the future, so if you want to build a full collection, don't miss out now. That's summoningsalt.com to continue or start your VHS collection today.
I still can't really process that this happened, to be honest. It's kind of unreal.
Alright, let's talk about Mike Tyson. The fight is broken into 3 phases, one for each time you knock him down. In phase 1, Tyson throws uppercuts, and after each one you can hit him twice. If you delay the second punch to the last 60th of a second possible, it deals 5 times normal damage. A frame late and he blocks. A frame early and you barely deal any damage. It has to land on this one magic frame. For a perfect phase 1, you have to do this 9 times in a row. Building the muscle memory to hit 9 frame-perfect inputs is an incredible process, but it's mandatory if you want to get a perfect Tyson. Phase 2 is more of the same, but shorter. Tyson throws more uppercuts, and this time landing 5 frame-perfects is enough to send him down. Finally, we arrive in phase 3. The clock is now ticked past 1:30, so Tyson switches to hooks. You can punch him twice after each hook, but if you instead just throw 1 punch on the last frame possible, it too deals extra damage. If you land 8 consecutive frame-perfect hooks, that's enough to drop Tyson for the 3rd and final time. 9 plus 5 plus 8. That's 22 frame-perfect punches. There's no wonder it took nearly 3 decades for this to be done the first time. But now that Zallard had done it, how could this be beaten? Well, the answer lies in 3 little letters: RNG. This fight is incredibly random. Tyson can randomly delay after nearly every punch he throws. Even with the same execution, your fight can vary by huge amounts of time just based on how often Tyson delays. In Zallard's 210, his first knockdown was at 56 and his second knockdown was at 132. These were both good, but with better RNG they could have been faster. The fastest first knockdown recorded on video was a 55, and the fastest second knockdown was a 129. Matt Turk reportedly once got a 54 and 128 in an unrecorded fight. The difference was, Zallard got a perfect phase 3 off his 132, while Matt Turk did not off his 128. Phase 3 is the hardest part of the fight by far. In fact, this fight was the first time Zallard had ever achieved a perfect phase 3. And to beat his 210, you'd have to get a faster second knockdown time by being luckier, then duplicate his perfect execution in phase 3. It was just staggeringly unlikely. So that's why most considered it unbeatable. And the perfect Tyson fight was the holy grail of Punch-Out records.
I don't know if I want to do any more attempts or anything. Tyson's pretty dead, I think.
Over the following several months, Punch-Out players occasionally fought Tyson, but more for practice than serious attempts to break the record. The top 3 players were Zallard 1, Sinister 1, and Weejui. Of the 3, Sinister and Zallard were veterans, while Weejui was a relative newcomer who wasn't quite on their level yet. For instance, Sinister and Zallard's best second knockdown on Tyson was a 129, while Weejui had only managed a 131. But although Weejui was behind them overall, there was one specific thing he was better at: the frame-perfect hooks. While Sinister and Zallard had only gotten a couple perfect phase 3s across years of playing, Weejui had matched that over just a few months. His consistency was more like 1 to 2%. It wasn't much, but it gave him hope that maybe something could happen. And then on July 12, 2015, Weejui tied his fastest ever second knockdown.
Holy I can't believe that just happened. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, I have tears.
A 208 out of nowhere. This was the most unexpected record in Punch-Out history. A relative newcomer had beaten Zallard's perfect Tyson. What's interesting is that Weejui was actually behind Zallard after phase 1, but he got amazing luck the rest of the way, saving 2 seconds in phase 2 and a second in phase 3. And most importantly, on an amazing pace, Weejui once again hit all 8 hooks. Zallard's 210 Tyson was supposed to last for years. Instead, it didn't even make it to the 1-year mark. So the attention turned back to Zallard. He'd finished one perfect fight before, perhaps he could do it again. But even if he did, it wasn't likely to be faster than a 208. To do so, he'd have to beat Weejui's second knockdown time. That meant getting a 129 or 130, an extremely fast pattern from Tyson that Zallard had only gotten a handful of times before. He'd have to get it again, then hit all 8 hooks in phase 3. Within days, Zallard was back to doing Tyson attempts. Even if he didn't beat Weejui, getting another perfect fight would be huge. He started to build up his consistency again, and on July 16th, he managed to make it past phase 2 with a 132 that now seemed a lot less impressive.
132, that sucks.
But in this fight, he nearly hit all 8, only missing the final hook by being a single frame late.
Ah, that's so...
This would have been a 209, not beating Weejui, but coming close. Zallard began to feel like his second perfect fight was right around the corner. And then, 3 days later, this happened.
Get.
A 54 phase 1. This had only been done twice before, once by Matt Turk years ago, and once by Zallard about a year ago offline. This was just the third 54 ever achieved, and the first one on video.
Oh, son. Oh.
This was quickly getting out of hand. There'd only ever been one other 128-second knockdown, Matt Turk back in 2007. Now 8 years later, it had happened again. Zallard had only a few seconds to think. He'd only have one shot at this. Hitting all 8 hooks right now was almost unfathomable, but Zallard had to try.
Get. You gotta be kidding, dude. 955, 207.
This was unbelievable. On his fastest pace ever, Zallard clutched up and hit all 8 hooks, getting the record back with a 207. Weejui's record only lasted for a week. The only bad part of this fight was that Zallard got a very slow phase 3 pattern. Tyson delayed between nearly every hook he threw. It led to a 39-second phase 3 versus Weejui's 37-second phase, but the rest of the fight was so fast that it didn't matter. I really can't overstate this. A 128 had never been seen on video before, and not only did Zallard stay calm, but he kept it together enough to play flawlessly for the rest of the fight. I'm still in awe 10 years later. Zallard was very clearly the best Punch-Out player on Earth. To beat this run, you'd need to get close to this 128-second knockdown, then get luckier in phase 3, all while not missing a frame-perfect input the entire time. The odds of anybody else doing that was super low. But still, the Tyson record was popular enough that other players were going to try. Weejui occasionally threw attempts at Tyson over the rest of 2015. Being the only other player in the world with a perfect fight, he at least had a shot at beating it. The problem was that even when he did make it to phase 3, he very rarely hit all 8 hooks, always either getting blocked or being early somewhere. That's what's a bit misleading about the 210, the 208, and the 207. All you see is the end result, a perfect phase 3. But for each perfect phase, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of misses. It was so hard to hit all 8 hooks. You may have noticed a sequence of dodges before the first hook. This is a buffer that Zallard developed that helps consistently land the first hook. But for the remaining 7, you're on your own. Unlike uppercuts, there's no consistent rhythm or timing you can use to help you. It's just a 1/60th of a second window that you have to pick out after every hook that Tyson throws. One error, and the attempt is thrown in the garbage. And that's why Zallard's 207 was so miraculous. He actually hit all 8 on that amazing pace. Even though other players did Tyson attempts through the second half of 2015, they hit all 8 infrequently enough that they stood little chance of beating 207. The best hope to take the record under 207 was Zallard himself. He started messing with Tyson again in 2016, and when he did, he had a breakthrough. Almost exactly a year to the day after his 207, Zallard posted the following to Twitter: "Mike Tyson had an accident." Linked was a video of Zallard beating Tyson in 206. This fight was kind of like the inverse of his previous record. Tyson's pattern was slower through phase 2 with a 129, but he got a very fast phase 3 pattern to make up for it. Once again, Zallard hit all 8 hooks under pressure to close out the fight. And then a few hours later, he posted this: 2 206s in one day. This second one came off a slightly higher 129, but had an even faster phase 3 pattern. The man hadn't played Tyson in a year, and in a single day, he beat the world record twice. There was nobody else on Zallard's level. But this created a bit of a conundrum. The world record was now tied between these two 206s. Which one was actually faster? Well, for most fights in Punch-Out, the game gives you a decimal for more precision once the fight is complete. There are 7 increments for this decimal: 0.00, 0.25, 0.48, .61, .82, .97, and .99. If the fight lands in the first few frames of a second, it'll spit out .00. If it lands in the next few frames, it'll say .25, and so on. The problem is that the Tyson fight never gives you these decimals. Instead of the post-fight screen, the end credits roll. But in 2014, a man named OmniGamer created a solution, the Tyson Finder. This is a tool where you enter frame data about your Tyson fight, and it frame counts it for you, telling you what decimal you would have gotten had there been a post-fight screen. Zallard entered his frame data for these two 206s. The first was a 206.97, and the second was a 206.82. It was only one frame faster, but enough to take it to the next increment. So, 2 world records in one day for Zallard. His record streak was intimidating. Although Weijui briefly snatched the world record from him last year, it only lasted a week, and now Zallard was taking it to new heights. Sinister One had never managed a perfect Tyson. Weijui only had the one, but he couldn't replicate it. Zallard now had 5 perfect fights, and counting. The community watched with bated breath to see what he'd do next. But then all of a sudden, a wrench was thrown into the works when a third player pulled off a perfect Tyson fight. Someone fairly new who was making a push for the world record. That player's name was Summoning Salt. Back in 2016, I was an inexperienced Punch-Out speedrunner, still learning the ropes, but improving quickly. Eventually, I realized I had to focus on Tyson if I wanted to reach the next level, so I did. After months of practice, on May 7th, 2016, I achieved my first ever perfect Tyson fight. And here's the video. Yeah, I was an idiot and wasn't recording despite having a tape loaded in my VCR. I scrambled to press record the instant Tyson hit the mat, and only got a little max celebration. Luckily, I redeemed myself a few days later by getting a 210 Tyson, this time fully captured in all its glory. And then, a few weeks later, I got another. And then another a few days after that. And then another later that same day. It became apparent that, for whatever reason, I had a knack for landing the frame-perfect hooks. By this point, Zallard had upped his perfect Phase 3 consistency to about 10%, but mine was closer to 15 or 20%. I was able to finish off a lot of fights that made it past Phase 2. However, Zallard still had one massive advantage over me. His dodging was far and away better than mine. The tighter you cut each dodge on Tyson's uppercuts, the sooner you can start to counter him. In other words, ideally the instant after Tyson throws his uppercut, you want Little Mac to be back to center so he can punch. Here's a comparison of the same pattern with both tight and loose dodging. The difference between dodges may only be a few frames, but across an entire phase, the time can really add up. By the end of the phase, the difference might total multiple seconds, which is obviously a game changer if you're going for a world record. Tight dodging is risky, as if you're too early, you get knocked down. Zallard was better at it than me. A pattern where I'd get a 55, he'd get a 54. Part of the difference was that Zallard had mastered double quick dodging. He'd preemptively dodge just in case Tyson did the short delay, and then did a second dodge to account for his long delay. This took reaction time out of the equation, letting Zallard focus on cutting his dodges as tightly as possible. So even though I was able to get as many or more perfect fights than Zallard, his were faster on average. After a handful of perfect fights, I managed to get a 207, but Zallard of course had a pair of 206s. As things stood, I didn't have a great chance of beating him. Yet I wasn't discouraged, because even though he was ahead, I had my eyes set on the ultimate prize. The time that I knew would be the end of the road for Mike Tyson, if it was ever achieved. My goal was to be the first person to set the unbeatable Tyson record, 205. If you get a second knockdown of 128, like Zallard did a year earlier, then get an extremely fast Phase 3 pattern, you can get a final time of 205. What if you knock him down at 127? Well, here's what happens. To begin Phase 3, Tyson stands still for a couple seconds preparing to throw an uppercut. Then the timer hits 130, his pattern switches, and he throws hooks. He can't start before 130, so knocking him down before 128 just means he stands still longer. As long as your second knockdown is by 128, you're going as fast as you can go. So there were 3 components to getting a 205. First, get a very fast uppercut pattern to get a 128 or earlier. Second, get an extremely fast phase 3 pattern, which is about 1 in 8 likely to occur. Third, hit all 22 frame perfects through the entire fight without missing. A 205 was effectively a perfect fight. There was no going under it. Zallard and I both knew this would be the ultimate Tyson record. We each had our strengths and weaknesses. He was a little faster than me, but I was a little more consistent. Over the summer of 2016, we both ramped up our Tyson attempts in an effort to get the 205, and we began getting perfect fights like they were nothing. By the end of August, Zallard and I had achieved a total of 66 perfect fights. None of them had beaten his 206.82. We didn't realize how lucky he was at the time to get that fight. I was frustrated. For all these perfect fights I'd gotten, what good was it if I couldn't beat Zallard? And then came September 2nd.
Holy cow.
On my 44th perfect fight, I finally got a 206, and it was a new world record. Although my recording setup at the time didn't work with the Tyson Finder, it most likely beat Zallard by 4 or 5 frames, some sort of mid-206. But what I was most proud of was my execution. I'd mastered the double quick dodge, and I was cutting things fairly tight. Even though this wasn't the 205, I felt that the fight showed my improvements, and that a 206 had been a long time coming. But what I wasn't expecting was what happened next. Let's just say, that day ended up being quite significant for me.
Oh, whoa, what? Oh, what? I have no words. I do not have words. I don't have words. Yep, 206. Just another one. No big deal.
My first 43 perfect fights were all 207 or above. The next 4 in a row were 206s, all on the same day. Clearly, there'd been some sort of breakthrough here. Of the 4, the fastest was likely the third one, and it was probably a 206.25, but again, there's no certainty since my recording setup was bad. Either way, we were now just frames from the 205, and I was more confident than ever. I continued getting perfect fights over the next couple weeks, including a couple 206.00s. The big difference was my dodging. I'd finally caught up to Zallard here, and was shaving time off that previously was impossible for me. Chances at the 205 were increasingly common. It all culminated on October 1st, when I got a first knockdown of 54 and a second knockdown of 128. In Phase 3, he gave a very fast pattern, I hit all the hooks, and it was over. Finally, a 205, the fastest Tyson fight possible. It took 64 perfect fights from me, plus a few dozen from Zallard, to achieve this time. A couple years earlier, the first ever perfect fight was considered an unbeatable record. But through faster dodging, better luck, and increased consistency with the frame perfects, we'd shaved another 5 seconds off. And now, no matter what we did, we couldn't lower it another second. But okay, technically, it could still be beaten by a tiny bit. Tyson gave an extremely fast phase 3 pattern, but at the very end he did an 8-frame delay. It was still fast enough for a 205, but the decimal was a 205.82. Had he not done this 8-frame delay, the time would have been 205.25. This was the actual fastest possible time. There are several paths to getting a 205.82, including the one I had, but there's only one very narrow path to a 205.25. You need the fastest phase 3 pattern possible with 0 delays anywhere. The odds in a phase 3 pattern for a .82 is about 1 in 8, but for a .25, the odds are just 1 in 41. In other words, on average you'll get 5 205.82s before seeing a 205.25, and getting a 205 just once took months of effort for me. I was pretty satisfied with the time that I had, but a small part of me did want that truly unbeatable .25 fight. So I decided to throw attempts at it every now and then. And just to shake things up, on a few of these attempts, I played on Mr. Dream instead of Mike Tyson. When Tyson's contract expired in 1990, Nintendo re-released Punch-Out with him replaced by Mr. Dream. He's just a sprite swap of Tyson. There's no actual difference between them, and the two fighters behave exactly the same. Now, most people think Tyson is way cooler, and I agree, but I figured there was no harm in doing a few attempts on Mr. Dream, since the vast majority of the time I still played Tyson. Well, on March 1st, 2017, that backfired a bit.
Yep. That's a world record, I think.
I was not expecting to actually set a record on Mr. Dream, and the community wasn't too thrilled about it. Nobody wanted the world record to look like this. But fortunately, this wasn't the end of the road. This fight got the 1 in 41 phase 3 pattern, but it was off a low 129 instead of a 128. It was definitely a new world record, but likely a 205.61, not a 205.25. There was still a chance to redeem myself. I had to make sure the .25 was on Tyson. So I kept playing off and on through 2017 and early 2018, but the 205.25 never showed up. I duplicated the 205 numerous times, but it was always the .82 pattern, not the .25. I grew frustrated as although my consistency got better, I never got the pattern I needed. Still, I figured if I kept going, I'd get it eventually. After all, I had to get the record off of Mr. Dream and ensure that the ultimate 205.25 was set on Mike Tyson. But then out of frustration one day when Tyson wasn't giving me any luck, I impulsively switched back to Mr. Dream. And a half hour later, this happened. This time, I knew I'd screwed up. A 127 phase 2 and the 1 in 41 phase 3 pattern. It was the exact fight I'd been looking for, but it wasn't on Tyson. There was a mix of celebration and frustration among fellow Punch-Out speedrunners. If I or others kept playing, we could tie this time on Tyson, but it would be an afterthought. The 205.25 would always have been done first on Mr. Dream. Nothing would change that. It was my own decision to play on this fight, however briefly, and now I had to live with the consequences. At least I'd finally gotten the .25. But now, the fun was over. This was the end of the road, the time I'd been chasing for 2 years, and it was officially perfect. But hey, you're smart. You know that's not the title of this video, and you're probably well aware I've been lying to you for the past half hour. The 205.25 was perfect in a way, but there's one extremely difficult thing you can do to beat it by a mile. It's time to talk about the Phase 3 uppercut. We've already established that if you knock Tyson down by 128 or earlier, it's all the same. He just stands there and waits until 130. But what if we go way earlier? Well, if you knock Tyson down by a mid 125 or better, his move timer advances enough to throw an uppercut before 130. This lets you deal extra damage, and you ultimately only have to land 6 frame perfect hooks after instead of 8. This is known as the Phase 3 uppercut, and it saves several seconds over a normal Phase 3. The Phase 3 uppercut had been talked about as a theory for many years. Even Matt Turk mentioned it back in 2007 as a potential improvement for a future world record. But through all the time Turk, Sinister1, Zallard1, and myself held the record, the Phase 3 uppercut was like a meme. Something we joked about that was impossible to obtain, while 205 was the human limit. But now, we had no choice. The Phase 3 uppercut was our only option to lower the record further. We had to figure out how to do it. The key was getting a second knockdown by a mid 125. We'd seen 127s and even 126s for years, but this was a step further. You'd essentially need no delays from Tyson throughout the entirety of phases 1 and 2, a pattern that on its own would be 1 in a few hundred. Then on top of it, your dodging had to be incredible, each within a frame or so of perfect. The only bright side was that now, the Phase 3 pattern didn't really matter. If someone could get a Phase 3 uppercut and finish the fight, it would be a guaranteed big world record. We knew it should be possible, we'd come close before, but in over a decade of speedrunning the game, nobody had actually gotten one. The path was a 53 Phase 1 and a 125 Phase 2. Any delay killed the attempt. I poured hours and hours just trying to see a Phase 3 uppercut. 99% of attempts died within the first few punches, as I needed a blazing fast pattern. But every now and then, I got past Phase 1, and then things got real intense.
Well, how about that? How about that? 52! 52, I've never gotten that. Oh man. Oh my god, that was it! Dude!
On this attempt, I lost the very last coin toss of Phase 2. He was 50-50 likely to delay here. Had he not delayed, it would have been a Phase 3 uppercut. As the months went by, this became a common theme. When I made it deep, he delayed at the last moment. And if he somehow didn't, then I usually threw it away myself.
I hate myself, that was it.
Here, I missed the second to last punch early, which wastes 7 frames. It led to a high 125 instead of a mid 125, and I missed the Phase 3 uppercut by frames. But at least I was getting close, and once I got it to all line up, I'd then have to execute under the most pressure of my life. I'd have just one chance to land a frame perfect uppercut and 6 frame perfect hooks. If I missed, it might take weeks, months, or even years to see another Phase 3 uppercut. My consistency at a perfect Phase 3 was about 30%, but I was really hoping to clutch it out, even under the enormous pressure. And then, on July 9th, 2018, it was suddenly go time. And there was a miss. Well, I guess it could have gone worse. I hit the frame perfect uppercut, hit the first 3 hooks, but I was early on the 4th hook, meaning I hit him twice for less damage instead of once. Honestly though, I wasn't too upset. It was so hard spending hours and hours fighting Tyson with nothing exciting, then all of a sudden you're under insane pressure with very little warning. I kind of figured I'd mess up the first time I made it there. My focus now was getting there again. Since I'd seen it once, now I could be just a little bit calmer. Maybe on my next chance, I'd be able to lock in and hit all the frame perfects. I played Tyson off and on through the rest of 2018. And then in January, the second ever Phase 3 uppercut was achieved, but it wasn't by me.
I'm not going to get a Phase 3 uppercut, am I? Let's assume we are. Let's just assume we are.
This was an amazing moment in Punch-Out history, when Pap became the second player to pull off a Phase 3 uppercut. Pap was a skilled speedrunner, but not quite on world record level. He was in 3rd place for full game speedruns, and his personal best on Tyson was a 2:06. He preferred to grind more niche categories like high score. But Pap was good enough at tight dodging to get a Phase 3 uppercut, and you never know when the right pattern is going to strike. So, being suddenly faced with this insanely rare situation, Pap had the responsibility to try and close it out. He missed the frame-perfect uppercut and both of the first 2 hooks. But the fact that he got one at all was very impressive. It served as a reminder that although I had the Tyson record, it wasn't guaranteed to stay that way. All it took was one person getting a Phase 3 uppercut and clutching out the end. I was determined to finish my next fight that made it there. As 2019 went on, I ramped up my Tyson attempts. It became monotonous, hours and hours of fighting Tyson with nothing exciting. But I had to stay on my toes, because I knew at any moment I could get the pattern and have to execute. There was no warning when it was coming. The 52s and 53s were mixed in with hundreds and hundreds of bad patterns. Each time I entered the Tyson password, I knew it was almost certain to be a failed attempt. But I had to keep trying. And then on July 20th, 2019, I got my second ever Phase 3 uppercut. Oh my god, I might have just done that with 2 8-frame delays. Holy sh**. Okay, this is happening. Yeah! Oh my god! Oh my god, where did that come from, man? This was the biggest improvement to the Tyson record since Zallard's 2:10. It was absolutely surreal to see a Phase 3 uppercut in a world record speedrun. The fact that I pulled it off on just my second time making it there made me very proud. The community celebrated and cheered me on. Even past record holders stopped by to see what happened. I had my fun watching it all pour in. But as crazy as it sounds, given the circumstances, this was actually a very slow fight. In Phase 3, Tyson has a total of 20 different patterns he can give, each with a different amount of delays. The pattern I got was the very slowest of all 20, delays at every opportunity with the slowest sequence of punches. Additionally, to get a Phase 3 uppercut, you must knock Tyson down within the first 13 frames of a 125. Anything higher and the Phase 3 uppercut doesn't come out. Well, this fight knocked Tyson down on exactly the 13th frame. So it was the latest possible Phase 3 uppercut, combined with the slowest Phase 3 pattern. And the result was a 2:03.00 time on the first frame of the increment. This was quite literally the only combination that could yield a time as slow as a 2:03, and it happened to be what I got on my first finished fight. But honestly, I didn't care. I'd gotten another Phase 3 uppercut and executed when it mattered the most, under a ton of pressure. What did it matter if Tyson screwed me over in Phase 3? That being said, I knew that if I could finish another Phase 3 uppercut, it would almost certainly be faster. I wanted to try and get more Phase 3 uppercuts. Even if it took a while, I might need just one more chance at Phase 3. There'd been a full year between my first and second Phase 3 uppercuts. But as it turned out, to get my third, it only took about 2 months. I'm very lucky that I still have this recording. I was playing offline, but recording to VHS, and this is footage that I took from that tape. I managed a 52 first knockdown, and then Tyson gave a super fast Phase 2 pattern. The result was a low 125 second knockdown. I was ahead of the record by about 10 frames. This was guaranteed to be a new world record if I could finish. I hit the uppercut, but rushed the first hook. It was all over in a matter of seconds. My third Phase 3 uppercut was a failure. This was a tough pill to swallow. But the one positive was that this Phase 3 uppercut took months instead of years. I was getting better at tight dodging, and rarely missed frame-perfect uppercuts. I capitalized on fast patterns when I got them. If I kept going, maybe this trend would continue. So I did. And just a month later, I saw my 4th Phase 3 uppercut. Okay, that just happened.
Oh my god, it's done.
What? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. The 203 was a good first step, but this 201 was actually a really solid Phase 3 uppercut time. My pace was a bit quicker after Phase 2, and then the Phase 3 pattern I got was much better, 30 frames faster in fact, which was above average luck. The frame counted final time was 201.48. Perhaps most importantly, I was really happy with my Phase 3 consistency. It was a small sample size, but I was now 2 for 4 on executing Phase 3. That was 50%, higher even than the 30% that I saw during practice. I've been able to clutch out a 203 and a 201 on just 4 Phase 3 uppercuts. I think my reaction at the end of the fight says a lot.
Oh my god, it's done.
It's done. This fight was exactly what I was looking for. Not only did I not get awful luck at the end, but I actually got pretty good luck. A 201, let alone a 201.48, was another huge improvement. I felt that if I kept going, I'd be unlikely to beat this anytime soon. So, I stopped Tyson attempts and moved on to other projects in Punch-Out. But something about the Tyson fight has always drawn me to it. I think it's the rapid restarts. If an attempt dies, you can immediately put in the password to get another chance. And you never know what's about to happen. It's an addicting feeling. So although I took a break for a few months, by early 2020 I was ready to come back. But since the record was so optimized, I decided to implement something new to help me save a few more frames. Ducking. In Punch-Out, ducking is an alternative to dodging that is very rarely used throughout the game. It's performed by quickly pressing down twice on the D-pad. It's harder to be precise with a duck than a dodge, and it's a more awkward input in general. But it has one benefit. A frame-perfect duck is 1 frame faster than a frame-perfect dodge. I looked at all of Tyson's uppercuts and analyzed the difficulty and randomness of ducking each one. In the end, I found 5 uppercuts through the first 2 phases that I felt I could duck instead of dodge, potentially saving me 5 frames. This at least made it a little more realistic to beat the 201.48. I'd lose more attempts to getting punched, but the attempts that did make it would be faster. In early 2020, I came back and did more Tyson attempts. And sometime in late March, I got my 5th Phase 3 uppercut, but unfortunately I didn't save the recording. All I remember about it is that it happened live on stream and that I messed up Phase 3. That lowered my Phase 3 consistency to 40%, but I was still happy with that. I took another break from Tyson after this, but it was becoming cyclical. I always came back to Tyson. I'd mess with other fights for a while, but I just couldn't stay away. By July, I was itching to fight him again. With the record already being a 201, I mentally prepared myself for a long grind. I did a couple offline sessions and struggled, making mistakes and throwing away good patterns. And then, out of nowhere, this happened. This was achieved offline, but I was recording to VHS, so we have footage of the first ever 2 flat on Mike Tyson. I did the ducks and had a decent pace after Phase 2, but this fight was made by the Phase 3 pattern. He barely hesitated at all, and I gained 11 frames over the already fast pattern in the 201. Beyond that, the fight wasn't amazing. Most notably, I missed the 3rd uppercut of the fight to lose 7 frames, and Tyson did a small delay in both Phases 1 and 2. Yet the amazing Phase 3 made up for it all. And it was a good thing I added in those 5 ducks. The final time of this fight was a 2 flat .97. Add 5 frames to that, and it would have been another 201. I really wasn't expecting to get a 2 flat so soon. By sheer luck, each of the 3 phase 3 uppercut times I'd set had been new world records. And perhaps most importantly, my phase 3 consistency was back up to 50%. I didn't think that was sustainable for landing 7 frame perfect punches, but it was certainly a good sign. And now, after all these improvements, after 6 phase 3 uppercuts, I was just a second away from the ultimate Tyson barrier, the sub 2. We'd talked about this for a few years in a theoretical sense, figuring it would probably never happen. Now, here I was, seemingly right on the cusp of the most legendary achievement in Punch-Out history. But looks can be deceiving. This one remaining second was special. It was different than all that came before it. Despite being a second away, I wasn't even close to the sub 2. To understand why, we need to take a deep dive into the Mike Tyson fight. On screen is the TAS of Mike Tyson, made by a TASer named Phil in 2004. A TAS is a theoretically perfect speedrun, created using tools like save states and frame by frame. The final time of the Mike Tyson TAS is 158.61, and humans will never achieve this time. The TAS gets perfect luck of roughly 1 in 150,000, and it ducks under every uppercut frame perfectly, not losing a frame through the entire fight. So how close can humans get to this? Well, 158 is out of the question, but 159 is just barely possible. The task goes for 10 additional ducks that I chose to not go for in my 2 flat 97, due to their difficulty or other various reasons. Adding those 10 frames to this task puts us at 158.99. Therefore, to get a 159, we can lose no more than 20 frames across the task's perfect luck and execution. How realistic is that? Let's start with the luck. In phases 1 and 2, after nearly every uppercut, Tyson has a 50-50 chance at giving a delay. These delays are either 8 or 24 frames. He can also do what's known as a switchback, where he pauses and switches sides, and the dreaded 8-second delay. Now, winning every coin toss and getting no delays across phases 1 and 2 is extremely rare, about 1 in 1600. I didn't necessarily need this, but it had to be close. The faster the pattern, the better the phase 3 uppercut, and the more likely I was to break the world record. Phase 3 also has lots of luck, and it's quite interesting how it works. He throws 6 hooks, and there are 3 main patterns he can throw them in: 0 switchback, 1 switchback, or 2 switchbacks. He always starts with a right and then a left, and then usually he does 2 more lefts followed by 2 more rights. But 25% of the time, he instead switches back to right and then does another left. Then he has a 25% option to switch back a second time. The fastest are the 1 switchback patterns, with 0 and 2 being roughly the same speed. He can also delay 8 frames between most punches, so ideally you want 1 switchback with as few 8-frame delays as possible. Taking all this into account, Tyson has 20 different options for phase 3, ranging from 0 to 49 frames total of delay. You want somewhere on the lower end, but getting no delays at all like the TAS is quite unlikely, 1 in 85. Multiply it all together, and you get about 1 in 150,000. And that's not taking into account the execution. Dodging and ducking every punch frame perfectly is close to impossible. In a typical phase 3 uppercut fight, some of my dodges and ducks are frame perfect, but many others are 1 to 2 frames late. Finally, you're allowed to miss 1 uppercut early in each phase, but it means you have to do 1 more delayed hit at the end of the phase. This costs 7 frames. So, how did my record compare to a perfect time of 158.99? Well, I lost 16 frames from the phase 1 and 2 pattern, and 8 frames from the phase 3 pattern, which was actually incredible luck. On the execution side, I lost 8 frames from imperfect dodging and ducking, and 7 frames from a missed punch. That was 39 frames off of perfect, 24 from luck, and 15 from execution. To get a 159, I'd have to lower that number down to just 20. It seemed unlikely. More probable was I could either get a little luckier or play a little better and get a lower 2 flat time. And that's exactly what I set out to do in July 2020. I began keeping track of my stats on the side of the stream. Anytime I made it past phase 1 on pace, or past phase 2 on pace, I added it to the counter. My ultimate goal was to break the record, but I was also very content just getting more phase 3 uppercuts and seeing what happened. I hoped I could keep up my phase 3 consistency. Well, just a day into attempts, I got my first test. Wow, this is the 7th phase 3 uppercut ever, guys. This is it. Here we go. This was my first finished fight that did not result in a world record, but I was now 4 for 7 on my phase 3s. Just a few days later, I got another phase 3 uppercut, and I again successfully executed phase 3 to get a 201. This was now a 62.5% consistency at phase 3, much higher than I saw in practice with the pressure off. I wasn't sure why this was happening, but I wasn't complaining. Neither of these recent fights had good enough phase 3 luck, but if I could keep this up, a new record might be right around the corner. But little did I know the streak that was about to kick off. A few weeks later, on August 20th, I had another first. 2 phase 3 uppercuts on the same day. Unfortunately, this time I wasn't up to the task as I missed a hook on both of them. This was just the beginning. From August 2020 through June 2021, I saw 10 phase 3 uppercuts on Tyson. I messed up all of them in phase 3. It started as legitimate mistakes. I rushed the uppercut, I was late on the hook, whatever. But after a few in a row, it had entirely become a mental block. Every time I made it to phase 3, I desperately wanted to end the streak, which just made it harder. My phase 3 consistency, once at 63%, gradually fell further and further. Finally, on June 2nd, I ended the streak by hitting all 6 hooks off a 125, getting another 201. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. Still no new record, but at least it was something. And just like that, the mental block was gone. Over the summer of 2021, I settled into a more reasonable consistency. I didn't execute every phase 3 uppercut, but my mental game was stronger. I racked up a number of 201s, as well as a 202 and a 2 flat .99 that missed world record by 1 frame. Then on July 31st, 2021, I got a low 53 phase 1 that suddenly turned into this. Let's go! Alright, dude, 124. 125s are exciting, but 124s are really serious, because it means that you actually have a chance at a 159. Off a high 124 like this, you need the fastest phase 3 pattern, but unlike 125s, it's at least in play. And to just break the record of 2 flat 97, well, any of these patterns would work. 124s are golden opportunities, as long as you can execute phase 3. Yes! Oh my god! What is it, dude? What the heck is that? He didn't switch back, but he was really fast. That might be a record. At long last, I seem to have a new record. I didn't know the exact time, but I had a good feeling. Zallard in the chat certainly thought it was fast enough. I quickly went to frame count the fight. I was hoping for a 2 flat .61, but even a 2 flat .82 would be great. I typed in the frame data, pressed enter, and it was just a 2 flat .97. Technically it was 1 frame faster than my previous 2 flat .97, so I guess Zallard had a good eye. But it was pretty disappointing that it didn't even reach the next increment. Compared to the last record, my execution was far better, as I lost only 5 frames from dodging and ducking and didn't miss a punch. But Tyson's uppercut pattern was comparable, and the phase 3 pattern, while still decent, was significantly worse. After more than a year of fighting Tyson and 13 completed Phase 3 uppercut fights, all I had to show for it was a 1-frame improvement. I took a break for a few months after this, but by late 2021, I was back and more motivated than ever to break 2-flat.97. I threw thousands of attempts at Tyson and saw many more Phase 3 uppercuts, but the frustration continued. I got 202s, I got 201s, yet nothing was ever fast enough to beat the record. Anytime I successfully finished the fight, I called it a win, because at least I did my part, but they were certainly hollow victories. Meanwhile, my record wasn't totally safe. Other Punch-Out runners were beginning to get Phase 3 uppercuts, most notably, Hefeman82. Hefe was another high-level Punch-Out runner, and over the course of several months in 2021, he too got a few Phase 3 uppercuts. With a fast Phase 3 pattern, any one of these could have broken the record, but he never correctly executed Phase 3 to find out. Entering 2022, I was still the only player to have finished a Phase 3 uppercut fight. 201, 202, 201, 2-flat.99. I was getting killed in Phase 3. It was constant delays any time I made it there. I guess I didn't appreciate how quickly I got that initial 2-flat.97. It was just my third completed Phase 3 uppercut fight. By the end of 2022, that number was up to 31, and I still hadn't beaten it by more than a frame. Throughout 2021 and 2022, I was seriously motivated to get some sort of lower 2-flat time, but it just never happened. At least my Phase 3 consistency settled in at a solid 40%, but it didn't matter if I never got the luck. I finally threw in the towel at the end of the year, after 80 Phase 3 uppercuts, a 203, 9 202s, 17 201s, and 4 high 2-flats. Is that it? Is that it? Is that it? Dude, last time I got a 2-flat, I think it was Zallard who was like, oh, that's definitely it. That's a new record. And then I retimed it and it was a 2-flat 97. So I am not believing anything until I retime this, okay? Okay, before I retime it, let's go look at Phase 3 because I want to know if I should be hopeful or not. Oh, that's a new record. Yes. Yes. That is so a new record. Oh my god. Upon replay, I could tell from the timer that this was definitely it. I went ahead and entered the data into the Tyson Finder, and out popped a time of 2-flat.61. Finally, a 7-frame cut off the record. I was overcome with relief. I'd been trying to beat the 2-flat.97 for more than 3 years, and this was a substantial improvement. It was about time. What's more, this fight just so happened to have some of my best execution ever. Since the 2-flat.97, I decided to start ducking the first punch of the fight, meaning the best possible time was now a frame lower, 158.97. Compared to that, I only lost 5 frames from ducking and dodging, and my uppercut pattern was perfect. The Phase 3 pattern was the weak point, but it wasn't awful. Good enough on this amazing pace. Perhaps the key to this fight was my preparation beforehand. In the months leading up to it, I spent hundreds of hours playing full-game speedruns. When I made it to Tyson at the end of a run, I was under immense pressure, knowing that a single mistake could cost me a world record. It felt a lot like when I made it to Phase 3 on 2-flat pace, and it made me just a little bit more comfortable. I got this fight within a week of coming back to Tyson attempts. Now, I turned my focus to beating the 2-flat.61, hoping to do it in under 3 years this time. In my mind, there were 2 paths to doing so. This fight got the ultra-rare 1 in 1600 perfect uppercut pattern. I could get that again, then get a luckier Phase 3. Alternatively, I could get an uppercut pattern with a small delay, which was much more common, then get a very fast phase 3, one of the 4 fastest patterns. Either way, I'd have to duplicate or get very close to my execution level. Losing only 5 frames across 16 uppercuts was a tall order. I was excited to keep going and continued with rapid fire attempts in the fall of 2023. My phase 3 consistency was the best it had ever been, and my long-term average began to rise, from 40% up to about 47%. There were a lot more 201s and 202s. I even got the second fastest fight ever of 2flat.82. But as I passed 50 finished fights, no new record. We were at the point where I only made it past phase 1 a couple times per hour, and I made it past phase 2 once every few days. I had to stay mentally sharp when a rare scenario presented itself, then pray for good luck down the stretch. Each day I did hundreds of attempts, and the numbers on the side got bigger and bigger. Yet it seemed like the year was going to come to a close without any notable follow-up to the 2flat.61. But then, on December 28th, 2023, something very interesting happened.
Oh my god. 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 I did it.
This is Funkmeister, and in late 2023, he became the second person to successfully complete a phase 3 uppercut fight. He'd been running the game for a couple years, and his Tyson consistency gradually built up to rival anyone in the world. This was actually his 4th phase 3 uppercut, but the first where he hit all the hooks after it. He didn't duck any punches, which was safer but slightly slower. Yet, with a luckier phase 3 pattern, he could have had a 201 or even a 2 flat. This was really the first time since Zallard in 2016 that I had a rival on Tyson. Funk hadn't played as much as me, but if he had the talent to get a 202, he had the talent to break the record. So even into 2024, I kept fighting Tyson trying to break 2flat.61. But again, it just wasn't happening. I got plenty more 201s and 202s, but nothing faster. By mid-January, I'd amassed 62 completed fights on 131 phase 3 uppercuts. It was maddening to duplicate my efforts that many times without really breaking through. I had to take a step back and look at my situation. Ignoring the exact decimal, the record on Tyson had been a 2 flat for nearly 4 years. During that time, I'd spent hundreds of hours performing tens of thousands of attempts to lower it. And across all that, I'd gotten just 2 minor improvements. The sub 2 was still a long shot, but surely getting under 2flat.61 had to be doable. But the more time that passed, the more I began to doubt that. So in January 2024, I once again stepped aside from Tyson and just hoped that Funk or somebody else wouldn't beat me to the record. Instead of fighting Tyson, I spent a lot of evenings trying to kill screen arcade Donkey Kong, which is like the exact opposite of Tyson attempts. Each game can take 2 hours, not 2 minutes, as you work your way through 117 boards. And your nerves build up the entire time rather than hitting all at once. I sort of unlearned a lot of habits I'd acquired from the past 4 years of Tyson. Eventually, one day in early June, I had some time to kill, and instead of DK, I decided to try fighting Tyson again. I hadn't played Punch-Out in about 5 months, and was really just doing this for fun. Typically when I did Tyson attempts, I practiced extensively beforehand, and usually prepared through my previous weeks or months of attempt sessions. But of course, here that was out the window. I hadn't done this in a long time. This time, I was totally unprepared if anything happened. The first hour went about as you'd expect. Lots of misses as I tried to build back my consistency with the frame perfects. But suddenly, I found myself on a killer pace during phase 1 and scored a really nice first knockdown. Okay, that was really good dodging and ducking. That was actually really good dodging and ducking. A low 52. This meant a perfect phase 1 pattern as well as tight dodging and ducking. Phase 2 began, and to my shock, it was more of the same. Tyson wasn't delaying, and my execution remained impeccable. I'd gotten the 1 in 1600 uppercut pattern, and suddenly, all the nerves came rushing in. Despite being heavily out of practice, I'd somehow just seen one of the only low 124s ever on Mike Tyson. This was not only a great chance at the record, but it actually had a reasonable chance at being a sub 2. There was no time to think. I had to let the muscle memory kick in and hope that I could close this out. Get out of my face, man. That's a world record. That is a world record. Oh my god. I knew right away this was a big one. He didn't switch back in phase 3, but he didn't delay much either. Off of that pace, this had to be a low 2 flat time. I quickly punched it into the Tyson Finder, and out popped the time of 2 flat.00 on the 3rd frame. It was unbelievable. I'd spent the last few years trying to be as prepared as possible for this exact scenario, and it ended up happening during a rusty one-off attempt session in front of hundreds of viewers. Let's take another look at phase 3. He opened by not delaying after the first hook, then didn't delay after hook 2, but also didn't switch back. At this point in time, sub 2 was still in play. But he has 3 different delays after hook 4, and he gave me the second fastest one, which lost 8 frames. Good enough for a big record, but had this delay been the fastest one, the fight would have been a 159. Instead, now I was just 3 frames away. This was so tempting. A pursuit that had taken up 8 years of my life was that close to being complete. But the simple fact is, in the past I'd never fought Tyson for more than a few months at a time, before taking a break and playing something else. Even if I fought Tyson every day for the next 3 months, it was very unlikely that I'd break this new record. In one sense, I was closer than ever, but in another sense, what I needed for sub 2 hadn't changed. I had to decide what I wanted to do. And here's why that was such a hard decision to make. To get a sub 2, I basically would need the perfect uppercut pattern. That's 1 in 1600. Then I'd need a very fast phase 3 pattern. If I was really tight with my dodging and ducking, I'd have a 17% chance at getting such a pattern. If I was a bit slow, it was just 10%. That's 1 in 9400 if I played really well, or 1 in 16,000 otherwise. Then there was the small task of needing 21 frame perfect punches, many of which had to be done while under ridiculous pressure. So let's call it 1 in 10,000 to get the luck, then factor in the execution. How often could I land all 21 frame perfects while dodging and ducking tightly? It quickly became clear that this could take many, many tens of thousands of attempts. In my 9-year career playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, I'd fought Tyson roughly 75,000 times already. I might need to duplicate that to get the sub 2. But if I did pull it off, this world record would transcend all others in Punch-Out. The combination of skill and luck would push it beyond any other IL. It would be the highlight of my speedrunning career. It even sounded cool. The sub 2. What an amazing coincidence that this perfectly difficult barrier happens to reside exactly on a minute mark. If it was even 1 second off, it would either be too easy or completely unrealistic. And besides, Funkmeister and others were right behind me. They were good enough that if they happened to fluke the luck, they could capitalize on it and beat me to the sub 2. The only way to ensure being first was to do this right now. So, I made my decision. I was going to do Tyson attempts non-stop until I got sub 2. It could take many months, even years, but I was committed. It was sub 2 or bust. My plan was to play nearly every day, an average of 6 days per week, for about 2 hours per day. I built that time into my daily routine, usually playing in the evening. Even though I'd just gotten a huge record, I was still a bit rusty. Over the next couple weeks, I alternated between failure and success when getting a phase 3 uppercut, ultimately adding another 202 and 201. But notably, all these uppercuts came off of 125s, which meant they had no chance at sub 2 to begin with. Then on June 15th, I got another 124, but it was a high 124 since I got a small delay in Phase 1. Sub 2 was possible from here, but extremely unlikely. The only way this would work would be if I got the TAS Phase 3 pattern, which I'd never seen before. The chance was just 1 in 85. I needed right, left, left, with no delays anywhere. Imagine if I just got this right here, and the grind ended after 2 weeks. Oh my god, I almost got it. Holy sh**. I lost the last coin flip. Oh my god. Unbelievable. The last possible thing that could have gone wrong did go wrong. He delayed before the 5th hook. It pushed the final time to a 2flat.25 instead of a sub 2. This was still the second fastest Tyson fight ever, but it was hard to process how close I'd just come. I was literally a coin toss away from sub 2. If I'd had these two amazing fights just 13 days apart, maybe sub 2 was more likely than I thought. I pushed onward. Over the next few weeks in June, I finished more fights, all 201s and 202s. But in July, I suddenly went cold. I had a bad streak where out of 9 Phase 3 uppercuts, I only successfully executed once. Streaks like this really got in my head. In any sort of sequence where you're 50% likely to succeed, there's bound to occasionally be long streaks of misses. But every time, I worried that my consistency was ruined, and that if I ever made it deep into Phase 3 on sub 2 pace, I was bound to mess it up. Eventually, I pulled out of it and had more success. At this point, it had been 2 months since that 2flat.00. Day after day of fighting Tyson over and over and over. People often wonder, why enter the password every time? Why not use a save state just before the fight? Well, using a save state can lead to unintentional or even intentional RNG manipulation. The only fair way to do it is resetting and entering the password. So that's what I did, hundreds of times per day. It took until August 2nd to get another good chance. After a low 52 Phase 1, Tyson did what he almost never does, a perfect Phase 2 pattern. This was another low 124 and another chance at sub 2. The pressure was instantly turned up, as I anxiously awaited my gameplay and Tyson's pattern. That's a world record. I think. So here's the thing. Remember before how I said depending on your execution, to get sub 2 you either needed one of these patterns or one of these patterns? Well, Tyson had just given me this pattern, and the timer read 2 flat, not 159. So my dodging and ducking was slow. I could have had sub 2 from here. I rewatched the fight on stream, and the cope was real at how I played. So those are a little slow. That's pretty good though, that's really not bad. Okay, that's Phase 1. That was a slow duck. But that's such a low 124. Oh man, dude. Well, as a consolation prize, I was pretty sure that this was still a new world record. The record was 2flat.00 on the 3rd frame, and I had confidence that this fight beat it by a frame or two. I entered the data into the Tyson Finder. End frame. Are you guys ready? I don't know if I'm ready. 5611. I tied record? How can that be? Dude, how can that be? It says it's tied record. Unfortunately, I really hadn't played very well. Tyson gave me a perfect uppercut pattern and 16 frames of delay in Phase 3. This was 3 frames faster than the previous record, but my dodging and ducking was slow enough to make up the gap. Off of this pattern, you can lose no more than 5 frames and still get sub 2, and I had lost 8. This particular pattern was right on the borderline. Anything faster and sub 2 is pretty much guaranteed. Anything slower and I had no chance. So to help, I decided that going forward I'd go for 2 more ducks in Phase 1, and make it a bit more likely that I'd be fast enough off of this pattern. The 2 extra ducks came on punches 3 and 9. I didn't go for them in the past because, for whatever reason, it seemed to make Tyson more likely to switch back shortly after, which kills the attempt. But I decided it was worth it. I'd get slightly fewer attempts past phase 1, but on average they'd be 2 frames faster. The first 2 months of the sub 2 grind were in the books, and honestly, it had gone really well. But my luck was due to regress. The next 2 months weren't the same. Through August and September, I had many more finished fights, but they were all far too slow. The fastest was a 2:82 on August 31st. This trend remained the same into September. My execution was pretty good, but weeks and weeks passed with nothing too great. The only time things got really exciting was whenever I got a low 124 phase 2. These were golden opportunities for sub 2, and they were very rare. On average, one happened about every 3 weeks, but there was lots of variation. Sometimes I got it twice in 1 week. Other times, I'd go well over a month without seeing one. So every time I did get one, the pressure was enormous. I better not mess up, because I could easily go a month without being in this spot again. At the 4-month mark of the grind, I'd seen a handful of these low 124s. One resulted in the tied record, one resulted in a 201, and the rest I messed up under the pressure. It was so hard to hold it together knowing the stakes. All the other 201s and 202s were practice for whenever I made it there on sub 2 pace. I didn't know when it was going to be, but I wanted to be mentally strong. And once every 3 weeks or so, a low 124 showed up, and I'd be put to the ultimate test. Whoa. Come on, dude.
Why?
Every time I failed the test, it was agonizing. Nothing I could do but play for weeks and try to get there again. In October, I managed to successfully execute Phase 3 6 times in a row, which tied my longest ever. But they were all 201s and 202s. No close calls with the record. In November, I was a bit more up and down, finishing off some fights but messing up others in Phase 3. I remained committed to the task at hand. I wanted to be the first to sub 2. No way could I give it up after putting in this much time. And all of a sudden in January, my luck began to come around again. On January 10th, I got the 3rd fastest Tyson fight ever of 2:25. It even came off a high 124. And this fight was in the midst of an amazing streak of execution. Throughout January, I rattled off Phase 3 uppercut after Phase 3 uppercut, and successfully finished almost all of them. This was the best I had ever played. I desperately hoped that this was the final push, and that during this streak, the luck for a sub 2 would come around and I'd finally finish it off. For a couple weeks, it seemed like another mirage, with lots of 201s and 202s. But then, on January 21st, came the best chance I'd ever had at sub 2. Just a short while into my session, I got the once every 3 weeks perfect uppercut pattern. My dodging and ducking was good, so at this moment, I had a 17% chance at sub 2, a golden opportunity. I hit the Phase 3 uppercut, the first hook, and then he chose to not delay before hook 2. This improved my odds to over 26%. Then, the amazing part. Tyson switched back, albeit with an 8-frame delay. My odds in a sub 2 pattern were now over 56%. This was unprecedented. Tyson's next punch had to be from the left side. The only question was whether he'd delay 8 frames before it or not. He did not delay. This meant I now had a 75% chance at getting a sub 2 pattern. Tyson only had 2 hooks left to throw. If I didn't miss a punch, there was only one thing left that could kill this. If he switched back a second time, which was just 1 in 4 likely. As long as the next hook was from the left side, then sub 2 was guaranteed. Guys, that was it. He was gonna do it. I was so close. Guys, I had it. Ah, dude. He switched back. Dude, I had a 75% chance at sub 2. Right there. Back in June, I'd made it to the last delay and missed. Now 7 months later, it had happened again. I'd gotten unlucky both times. The odds that neither fight resulted in a sub 2, just 1 in 8. I was completely devastated. More than that, I was angry. I was in the middle of my best execution ever on this fight, had come so close, only to get it ripped away at the last moment again. As it turned out, that fight was in the middle of an insane streak where I hit 194 consecutive frame-perfect hooks across several Phase 3 uppercut fights and practice. I'd never even come close to that before. This was the most prepared I'd ever been, if the luck happened to line up. I was almost sure I'd execute if I made it there again, but it didn't happen. The hook streak ended in late January. And then, my execution got shaky. I messed up several fights that got Phase 3 uppercuts. That confidence that I'd be able to execute if I saw the luck faded away. That double switchback fight was my chance, and he just couldn't give it to me. It took me 8 months to get that close. And now, based on the evidence, even if it happened again, there was a good chance I'd be unable to hold it together. Then, on February 8th, I got the perfect uppercut pattern again. Alright, don't get excited and get in the rhythm. And just like that, I knew that for the first time ever, after 5 years of trying, Tyson had just given me the pattern for a 159. This fifth hook from the left side meant that he'd switched back once, but not twice, with exactly 16 frames of delay. There was only one option remaining. Tyson was going to throw 2 more quick punches from the left side of the screen. The luck was done. Standing in my way from the 159 was having to land 2 more frame-perfect punches. This was all happening so fast, but in my head I was keeping track of it all. I knew exactly what the situation was, and I knew what I had to do, but I didn't know if I would be able to. I'd spent the last 8 months trying to prepare for the nerves of these last 2 frame-perfect punches, but actually being in that situation, I realized I was completely unprepared for this. If I messed up, it could take many months, even years, before I saw this again. Please, just please, land these last 2 frame-perfect punches. It's over. I thought I'd be a lot more excited about this. Holy dude. Dude, am I dreaming right now? It's over. Oh my god. I'd been doing this for almost 9 years. Zallard and others have been going for even longer. Why was my reaction so quiet? Well, to be honest, I was in shock. After this long, part of me was expecting it to never happen. Looking up and seeing 159, it took a while to set in. Since the year 2020, I'd done about 75,000 Tyson attempts. Those were countless hours spent not knowing if it would ever pay off. I just kept going in hopes that one day, it would finally happen. When I got the first Phase 3 uppercut in 2018, I had no idea what it would turn into. I didn't know that I'd eventually get over 200 of them, successfully finishing 138. I had no idea the agony of every time I messed up, and the triumph of the few times I set a new record. When my first finished fight was a 203, my second was a 201, and my third was a 2 flat, I had no idea it would take 135 more to take the next second off. But in the end, I can unequivocally say, the quest for 159 was worth it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the link below to purchase a Summoning Salt Mega Man 2 VHS tape.